clown world. Honk honk, motherfucker. So, what happens to people that can't cognitively distance themselves from their own bullshit? They become evangelical or they become cynical or nihilistic. Most don't go psychotic to the point they start murdering people, but when they do, it's usually their families, their spouses. Most murder isn't random. That's what's so alarming about the psychopathy that results in mass murder or serial murder, because it's random. Its effects are very much parallel to terrorism. The reaction is on par with that as well. The response, keep us safe even if you have to take away our liberties. Taking away our liberties keeps us safe. Who are they? They're who never concern themselves with their own safety as long as the slaves are blaming each other for their bondage. The psychopath is a tool of the establishment. Most psychopaths aren't violent. When one is, and gets ridiculous media attention, smart people immediately suspect a psyop, which is what this film is. People think people that suspect psyops are happening are delusional. Well, isn't that a self-reinforcing negative feedback loop? Right? Who's delusional? Are you paranoid when they really are out to get you? Are you paranoid? Do you trust the media? I mean, if you watch the media review, critique this film, it's not going to shock you if somebody goes nuts in the movie theater and starts murdering people, because they've primed you for that. That's the whole idea of a psyop, okay? Some psychos are just psychos. No MK Ultra is always necessary to create the monsters that only monsters can protect us from, okay? They're baked into the rat race at this point. No ingeniously devised conspiracy plot is even necessary anymore. Psychosis is happening naturally when you force a conscious organism to exist in conflict within its own nature on a concrete cube. You're going to have psychosis because that's not our natural environment. We're a product of our environment. We're also a species that manipulates our environment to suit ourselves. Do we? Is this concrete jungle suiting and reflecting who we are as a species? It is if you're a domesticated human resource, aka slave, but it's not if you're a conscientious human being, though. Psychopathy is a natural consequence of forcing a sentient being to participate in a rat race when he's aware of what he is and what he's being subjected to. It's been proven with experiments. You give rats cocaine and you put them in a box and they take the cocaine. You put them in the natural environment and they don't want anything to do with it. They do it once or twice and then they're off to doing their own thing again, behaving in their own programming, their own little rat world. You put a normal person in a clown world, in a carnival. What do you think is going to happen? Psychosis. That's the underlying context for this fucking clown shit. There is a backward sort of narcissism that could be at play here. I'm not sure, because I've never been a psychotic killer, but I have lost my marbles a couple times. And when that happens, I've heard it described as losing the barriers of individualism, losing the distinction between the self and the universe, becoming one with the infinite and the cosmos. Well, if that happened to you and you happen to be suicidal or homicidal, what happens to a psychopath that wants to kill himself and then realizes that he is one with the infinite universe? He transcends time and space and stops relating to living creatures as unique or sacred. He doesn't give a fuck. He loses all traces of empathy that informs our survival instincts. That instinct is deeply rooted. His environment is toxic, okay? He's a product of his environment. Thus, he is toxic to himself and to the life in general, because he identifies life with pointless suffering. He becomes hell. He becomes the physical individual embodiment of hell. His survival mechanism is gone, and he has no regard for life in any of its forms at that point. He becomes a nihilist, and he loses his mind the way that Nietzsche did. How do certain people bypass their survival instincts so easily? That's a hardwired program that people just bypass. The will to live is hardwired into the program. Because we don't exist in order to work and toil and suffer for the luxury of masters. We know in our hearts that we aren't meant to live like this, bound by need to exist by dark magic, spells with green dyed little sigils made of the corpses of dead trees. Right? Little money sigils, paper. That's what drove the Joker nuts. The only way out is to go within. All is self, you know. So, kill the self. Liberate the soul from the bondage of carbon-based Ouroboros. And that's not the self. Suicide is a huge problem in the technologically advanced first world. Suicide claims more white straight males than any other demographic except trans folks. Why? What's actually happening in the minds of these people? Where does the suicidal ideation come from? You know, we talked about it in Otto de Liefeld. That was Arthur's plan. He was going to off himself publicly, but he had a change of heart at the last minute. He did off himself, though. There's no longer an Arthur. That clown that sat in that chair, his clown name was Carnival. You remember from my previous videos what Carnival is? He was Carnival the clown. Carnival means to remove the spirit from the flesh. Carnal, carne, carnival. He's dead. Arthur's dead. There's only Joker now. There is no other being but Joker. And we all saw that coming from the very first hallucination in this film. The reality wasn't built for people like Arthur Fleck. But you know, he isn't alone, and he isn't exceptionally fictitious. You know, I wager that if you are watching or listening to this video, you personally know someone who has been alienated and disenfranchised by society because they couldn't adjust to it. They couldn't just bury their conscience and go along to get along with the rape of the world by humanity and its never-ending quest for luxury. We have to learn how to reconcile and to atone, okay? And we have to do it alone. Nobody can teach you. Batman isn't going to save you. Where Batman exists, so does the Joker, and vice versa. They're bound together. And we do it to ourselves. We manufacture conflict where none really need exist. We fabricate enemies to rationalize and justify our bloodlust. We demonize one another to justify our shitty behavior toward one another. When we go to war with people we have no actual grievance with, we allow for their mistreatment and torture because we have no actual natural predators or serious existential problems, so we manufacture them. We fabricate dilemmas like some Hegelian dialectic coping mechanism to validate our existence by othering different aspects of ourselves until we are homogeneous and vapid and toothless as we can be in order to make ourselves weak enough, how do I say this? Weak enough to rationalize and justify letting our fucking inner monsters out, the ones that existed within our shadows. In order for us to do that, we have to sabotage ourselves and then blame externalities. We rationalize the absurd to get people to commit atrocities, convince them to believe in absurdities. It doesn't even take that much. You put your typical doofus in a room with a paid actor pretending to be an authority figure, give him a lab coat and a clipboard, and you can control people's behaviors and bypass their moral and ethical programming. We learned that from the Milgram experiment and the Stanford prison experiments. You know about those, right? Dude, I don't want to make this video any longer by explaining Milgram and Stanford. Just Google them, okay? Read Philip Zimbardo's book, Lucifer Effect, or Hannah Arendt's Banality of Evil. Eichmann in Jerusalem is the book's title. We know people will do evil shit if they are told to by who they deem as an authority figure. That's the point. So that's why we devised the concept of democratic leader selection. But it doesn't work when the people just select the most unethical and immoral leader that they can. People act like herd animals when they feel threatened, and fear is being used to manipulate people into going along with some seriously stupid shit. Lord of the Flies shit. That's what it feels like our whole society has become since Trump has become our president. Clown world. Doesn't even occur to these people that they're clowns too. Like the signs held by the mob in the Joker movie that reads, "We're all clowns." You know, again, this film's timing couldn't be more impeccable. Is it art imitating life or the other way around? Is this film leftist propaganda? I really don't think so. I don't think right wingers are going to watch this film and suddenly feel compassion for the poor or the mentally ill. If that was left wing, if it was left wing propaganda, that would be the result, right? Are they going to make it harder for mentally ill people to get a hold of weapons for war or commit murder? Are they going to all of a sudden come to their senses and accept that their tax dollars should be spent on assisting their fellow Americans because there's more to patriotism than just hating brown people? Are they going to realize that from this film? No, of course not. It's not. It's not socialist propaganda. You know, does this film romanticize radical left-wing extremism? I really don't think so. You know, maybe I'm just a product of a culture that has been disavowed by late-stage capitalism. But I don't have any sympathetic feelings toward anyone espousing an ideology that's to the right of Obama or Clinton. These Democrats aren't liberal. They're not progressive. They aren't what I'd call good people or good leaders or good representatives. Mr. Fleck's social worker couldn't have stated it any better when she did, when she told her patient that she could no longer see him. They don't care about people like you. They don't even care about people like me. You know, Joker isn't overly political. When all is said and done, it really is just a psychological thriller meant to entertain you and to make a buck off you. In the sense that it's art, it's intended to provoke you, your thought. The plot is intended to puzzle and amuse you. In that sense, it's a very well-written, shot, and produced film. People can't stop talking about it. Everyone's triggered by Joker. Fleck and his social workers talk about Arkham and when he was put in there, but they never talk about how or why he was released. Or his mother, for that matter. You know, she spent some time in Arkham as well. How did she ever maintain custody of Arthur after she was committed? Lots of plot gaps, lots of possibilities. You know, in Killing Joke, Joker says that his past is multiple choice, revisionist history, revisionist reality. The end scene betrays the reality that we don't even really know that Arthur Fleck will ever face off against the Dark Knight because we aren't positive he's actually the Joker. In the end, the final joke may be on the viewer. When his shrink asks him why he's laughing the only time in the film where he actually is genuinely laughing, he tells her, "You wouldn't get it." And then he presumably murders her and tracks her blood down the hallway of an Arkham Asylum that has different colored painted walls in the halls than the one that matched his Joker outfit. Okay? These walls still match his outfit because he's wearing a white gown of a patient in this scene. You know, my money is that the joke's on you, the viewer. Is he right? Or did you get it? Did you get the joke? There's no indication, subtle or otherwise, to signify what's reality and fabricated delusion. As the viewer, you have no bearing on what is real and what is delusion or even fantasy. There are a couple of tells in the film. He's never had a happy moment in his life. Anytime you see him even remotely happy, he's delusional. Anytime something seemingly goes his way, the way he'd like it to be anyway, it's delusion. The narrative as to how he obtained the gun is conflicted. He's not even consistent with that delusion. The cause and effects are really suspect in regards to how these events would go down in reality. Did he murder his neighbor? Why was he laughing maniacally in her apartment? Did he really kill Murray? Did any of this really happen? Did a version of it all happen? And that's what landed him in Arkham in the first place? And he's never left there since he was admitted? You know, he spends day after day telling his shrink the same story as to how he got himself in there, with creative license to revise his own history because the Joker's past is multiple choice, because he's fucking nuts. The film is a blueprint on losing your mind. The point is that anyone is an accident of birth away from being the next sociopath or psychopathic mass murderer. You know, we're all just one bad day away from becoming the Joker ourselves. Are the right to condemn this film as anti-right-wing propaganda? Does it make the connection between our current mass shooting epidemic and inaccessibility to mental health services and prescriptions obvious enough? Is that the point of the film? A right-winger, I know. I asked him if it changed his view or even made him think twice about his position on universal health care, access, and stricter gun laws, background checks, and whatnot. What do you think he said? Of course not. It's fantasy. Fleck knew he wasn't allowed to have a gun because in his mental condition, uh, mentally ill people are presumably not allowed to buy firearms. Okay, how do you stop that? That just stops people from seeking mental uh, care if their rights are going to be denied as a result of that. Background checks and whatnot. Do you also do you know that the mentally ill are magnitudes more likely to suffer the types of violent assaults than people with the legal means to defend themselves are? So the people that presumably shouldn't have their hands on guns are more likely to actually go out in search of them to protect themselves because they're goofy, they're weird, they get themselves put in situations like Fleck does, and he ends up getting his ass kicked, and he ends up shooting somebody like that dumbass in the movie theater. The mentally healthy people don't shoot people over popcorn or cell phones in a movie theater, but it happens in America. The authorities are concerned that life will imitate this art. Cops outside of theaters checking people's bags, no clown makeup, no props, frisking people. They're worried, are they? Are they worried that real life will imitate the life that this art is imitating? Why aren't they at all concerned that this art might actually be imitating a life that is realistic enough to inspire real life reaction from the actual mentally afflicted in our society? Why is that not what they're worried about? I don't know. Have you seen it? Do you think it's propaganda? Do you think it's a masterpiece? Did you get the joke? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, thank you.